Thank you. Hello, everybody. I'm Callum Underwood of Raw Fury Games. We're a small boutique indie publisher. There we go. This talk is about publishing, and specifically publishing a love story. Not publishing love stories, but a love story about publishing. So I have about an hour's worth of content I'm going to try and fit into 30 minutes. So if someone just wants to kick me off stage when I need to get off, please do. This is my current title. I choose a new one about every 3 months, depending on what I'm doing. Chief Acquisitions Officer. That basically means at Raw Fury, I'm in charge of signing games, reading pitches, talking to developers, and so on and so forth. I just lost half the room. Awesome. I bleed indie. Like, indie games is everything I care about. So that's what I'm going to be talking about today. So who are Raw Fury? We're a small publisher. We've shipped 4 games so far. So Kingdom, Gonner, Cathy Rain, and Tormenta. And we have another few in the pipeline. Dandara we're launching this year by a team in Brazil. We've got The Last Night, which was, in the E3 presentation, and we've got multiple other games in our catalog. And as you can see, these are the tenets of kind of how we want to be ourselves as a company. So we're very much for happiness. And what does for happiness means? It means that whatever we can do to have mutual success and make our developers happy, that's the route we'll go down. We're not about making a quick buck. We're not about, screwing people over to progress as a company. We're very much want to kind of look after the developers we work with and almost treat them like a family. So publishing. The biggest mistake I see from people looking for a publisher is the hunt for money. And usually the money and the decisions made are because of the money. And I think if you have one takeaway from this talk, it's that it's not about the money. You can find money anywhere. You can even get a bank loan, but you can find investors, angels, even co-funding initiatives. If you're just looking for quick cash to help you finish your game, don't go for a publisher. With a publisher, it's everything else that you're looking for. It's the QA, it's the marketing, it's the someone having your back, it's the knowledge and experience that the team brings. And that's what you should be looking for from a publisher, not just cash. Because like I said, finding cash isn't very easy, but it's certainly easier to find just straight up cash than people you want to work with for the next few years of your life. So it is about love. If you've not had a publisher before, this might be difficult to understand, but if you've had a publisher, you realize how close that relationship is, and really you end up doing everything together. You're going to be speaking to these people every week until the game ships, and usually up to a year or two after the game ships, and potentially for your next game as well. So really make sure that you get on and trust your publisher more than just, hey, great, we got offered $50,000, let's sign. Really make sure it's something that you actually want to go ahead and do and you think is going to be a benefit to you personally, as well as just a cash injection to the company. So how do Raw Fury choose games? I don't know if that's too easy to read, but so we ask ourselves a couple of key questions really before anything else. One of them is, are we the best publisher for this game? Right? So when someone pitches me a free-to-play mobile game, I don't even bother playing it because we don't know free-to-play mobile. So we're not going to be able to add value to that game itself. I got pitched a really awesome looking tennis simulator. Again, I said no without playing it because we're not in that market and we don't really know what we're doing in that market. Same as VR. Obviously, I was at Oculus for 4 years, so I know VR very well, but the team that I work with don't know VR very well. So are we really going to be the best publisher to go and ship a VR game? Probably not. So we want to ask ourselves that first. Second, are we too busy? We only really want to publish 4 or 5 games a year max. As soon as you start gathering games and filling up your catalog, you end up diluting your attention. You end up diluting what press you can do, and you just lose sight of each individual game. And we want to be able to focus on each game 100% and really work with them very closely. I'm just going to grab a water. Okay, so it says here the build can be early. We just want to see the magic. I've signed stuff that it's pretty late in its lifetime, and I've signed stuff that is no more than a few weeks old as a prototype. I think the key bit here is we always want to see a build as a publisher. There are absolutely publishers out there who will sign based on just a pitch or based on an idea or a sequel. I always want to play something because, as it says there, for us, it's almost all about gut feeling as well. Like is this something we can get excited about? Do we have that feeling of magic inside us when we play something? Or is it just, this is okay? And if it's this is okay, that's not one for us, and that's not something we would want to work with. So I've laid out our process a little bit as to how we go from initial pitch from a developer to actually signing the game. So the two things I care about more than anything are playing a build and knowing what the final budget for development of the game is. The reason for that is there's no point me asking you to waste your time building up pitch documents or flying to see me and talking to me about the game if either the budget is too high or if what we play doesn't resonate with us. So this is kind of the first gate. So I'll sit down and play every game that comes into my inbox, no matter who's it from, and I don't really care who it's from. I'll just play stuff. We say no to most of it, of course, but we always play it and always tend to give a little bit of feedback as well. So once I've tried it and I'm like, yeah, that was fucking awesome. Then we do wider play sessions. So that means grabbing a couple of my colleagues from whatever team. It could be marketing, it could be the QA team or production. So I grab them and have them play the game. If they're of the same same feeling as me that they think it's really, really good and something they would want to publish, only then do we move towards figuring out, like, okay, what about everything else? Like, who's actually building this game? What does the scope of the game look like? Is this going to be an 8-hour game, a 2-hour game? Like, what do they think it's going to cost to sell the game? All these other things that are interesting to us as a publisher. But it's important to note that that comes after everything else. Unless you can get us excited about playing the game, we don't go to that point because it's just going to waste everyone's time, including, mostly important, your time. So then the whole team plays. And that's our whole company. So we're 13 people. And once we get to this stage, everyone plays the game. And we don't vote necessarily because that puts a pressure on people to decide yes or no, but we gather feedback from everybody. Everyone has a veto on any game that we do because if they feel strongly enough it's not good for us or they don't want to work with it, then we don't ever want to force people to work on stuff that they don't feel excited by. But at this stage, if everyone is excited by the game and not just ambivalent, but they're like, okay, this is awesome, then we moved to due diligence and face-to-face. So for any game we sign, we fly them out to Stockholm, which is where the HQ is, and we hang around with them for a couple of days. So, we'll have lunch with them, we'll play board games, we'll talk business, we'll have a really kind of open-ended discussion about the vision of the game and what the background was and what their inspirations are. And really we allow them to meet all of the team because I don't ever want to sign a game where they just know me and not the rest of the team because that's, that doesn't help. I'm not the person you're going to be working with every day. So after we've done that, and due diligence is like, we just look at what you've done in the past, maybe ask a couple of people who worked with you. And really at this point, we're trying to figure out, like, are you someone we can work with for the next couple of years? And we're going to feel like that's a good and fun relationship. So finally, we do contract and cuddles. The contract we do is the same for every dev. We don't negotiate with individual devs. We want to have that really transparent. So every dev we sign is on the same deal. Of course, the numbers change, but that's based on what the burn rate is and how big the team size is. So that's kind of our basic process. And if you can imagine, 1,000 games in the first one and maybe down to kind of 2 games at the end one, like there's a lot that we're saying no to at every part of the process as we whittle them down to like I said, something that really excites us, but also happens to work on the budget and everything else like that. So how should you choose a publisher? There's certain things you should look for. Again, I think it's important for you to like your publisher. Do you feel like they're going to look after you enough? Do you feel like they've got your back? Are they going to care if you run out of money and you have to call them up and ask for more? Like, do you feel that's a conversation you're going to be comfortable having? What have they done before? What have they shipped? Are they willing to talk about the successes as well as the failures? Are they willing to talk about why a game they shipped maybe didn't do too well? Contract, of course, is an obvious one. Like, does it actually make sense for your finances? And is that something you're comfortable signing? And finally, love. You have to love the publisher you're going with if you get a choice. Again, if your game is only going to be signed by one single publisher and you've tried all of them, you don't really have much choice. But I always think you have some choice there and you shouldn't sign a quick deal. I've seen it happen too many times with a publisher that you don't really love. And I think you should try and wait for something that just feels very right to you as a developer. So this is the perfect email. I don't know if you can read that. It's kind of small, but I wanted to break down the perfect email that comes into my inbox when someone's trying to pitch me a game. So I'll go through it now. So I wrote this myself. It's not real, as you might be able to tell. So hi, Callum. David here from Totally Fake Game Company. So straight away, we're like, who are you? And give a link to the company. So if I'm clicking on an email, I can just click a link, straight away see who you are. We were responsible for this game and that game. Again, a couple of links if you've done stuff in the past, and you know, I can just see what the project is. Again, count on people being either lazy or busy or both. So you want to make it really easy for someone to just very quickly get an understanding of what the developer's goals are, aligned with what your goals are. So moving on, we've been working on a game called Raw Furry for the past 4 months as a team of 3 people. You can see a video of the gameplay here, and you can download a build of the game here. So video footage, I think, is super important, especially if you're like trying to get this game in front of as many people as possible. If someone can click your video and see some gameplay, it might take them from, I don't have time to check this out now, to this looks awesome, I really want to play it right now. It might do the opposite. It might tell them, actually, this is a farming simulator. We don't do those types of games, in which case they can pass. But it gives them a very quick and easy way of knowing what you're talking about without having to download and install and everything else. And then either a download link or a Steam key to the actual game, which, you know, what you're doing here is you're making it so that the publisher doesn't have to email you back and go, this looks cool, can I get a build? Or, you know, how much is it going to cost? You just want to be able to have that information straight there, so they don't have to have that back and forth. So here is a GIF of the game. I'm honestly like about 6 months away from just signing games based on GIFs on Twitter. Like, if you don't have a GIF of your game, make one right now. But again, it's just cool. I get it. I can see what sort of the gameplay is, and it's just very easy to tell about a game from what you can fit into a 2 or 3 second GIF. It's kind of weird. So moving on, more stuff about the game. What's the tagline? What's the genre? Like, allow people to read on and read more info about it. Then at the end, we need 18 months to make the game. We're looking for a publisher to cover the development cost of $200,000, as well as do porting, QA, marketing, etc. Like, put what you actually want from a publisher. Don't make the publisher ask the question, so what do you want? Because some people just want a marketing partner. Some people want, you know, full development from the very beginning. And if you can just put that into an email at the first, you're going to get a lot more people interested because they don't have to work to try and get the information out of you. Finally, what are the platforms are you going to ship on, or what do you want to ship on? And then provide alternate contact platforms. I've occasionally read an email that I'm so excited about that I just want to like call the dev straight away, or like message them on Skype or something. Like, put that there, because there's no harm in what it does. And if someone like really wants to get hold of you, they can just call you and you can chat it through. Like, I've done that rather than emailing back. So that's my example of a perfect email. It changes per publisher, but I think if you have the info that's set within this email and just phrase it differently, I think you'll be in a good position to at least get more replies. You'd be surprised how many devs thank me for even replying to say no versus just ignoring it. So maybe you've experienced that yourself. Okay, avoid time wasters. Too many times I've had friends, or I've done it myself, where you'll fly out for a meeting somewhere, or you'll take a half day to go and meet with someone. Okay. And then you get to the end of the pitch about your mobile game, and they go, "Oh, we're not funding mobile games," at the end of the pitch, or "No, the budget doesn't work for us." And this is why I think it's important to have all the information out at the beginning, because if you keep it vague and just ask for a phone call or ask for a meeting, you might waste a ton of time before you get to the point where you realize actually you couldn't even work together, even if the pitch was amazing. So avoid time wasters, but also avoid wasting people's time, and it'll be a lot easier for you in the future. Okay, so this is like the best comic on the internet. I don't know if anyone's seen it. It's fantastic, and I steal most of my jokes from it. I thought this was perfect, and it's true that this happens a lot. And I think if about raw food, I think one of the best things we do is we don't fuck with the game. Like, if a developer wants to add something to that game or do their own game design, one of our core tenets is to not force them to change, right? And sometimes that's to the detriment of the game, but that doesn't matter. Like, we're a publisher. We're not there to force them down our path for what makes sense. We just want to enable them to make the game that they want to make. And again, it's it's often that people with like suave biz dev people and really nice pitches and well put together, and they fly out and meet people in offices, like they get funding more than the untamed creative genius because they manage to get in front of the right people. I think that's broken, and it's the job of people like myself and other people at other companies that I'll mention to find those people and to help them put that creativity towards making a game, and like not force them to think about how is this gonna, what am I gonna do with my studio over the next few years? How am I gonna make $1 million? Like we just want people making amazing stuff, and we can help them kind of take that to the next level. So this is kind of important to me. And there was a recent Twitter argument about like difficulty in games and also journalists playing games. Like games are a form of expression. There's no right way to play a game, just as there's no right way to market a game or to design a game. And I think this speaks to the previous point. If a publisher is really trying to push you down a certain path that you don't feel comfortable with as a creative person, don't do it, or don't go with that publisher. Like be very careful of who you're going to work with, because this is your baby that you're working on, and you don't want people to have to tell you what to do. And that's often seen as like traditional publishing. So yeah, the last week I contacted all of the developers that we're either working with on released projects or we've shipped before. And I said, what's the best and worst thing about working with Raw Fury? And I like doing this every few months because you really get to know kind of what the bigger pictures are rather than like little game design problems or anything. It's nice to see the broader relationship. So it's only fair that I share the bad. The negative comments were mostly to do about time. Like we took a long time to get t-shirts done for Gonner, for example, almost a year after we said we'd first do it. We've been a little slow getting invoices back to people, like all these things that we've solved by bringing on some more people. So we grew by about 4 in the last 6 months or so. So that we're trying to solve that, but that's definitely a negative thing about small companies is we might have like great ideas, but also be careful that like you can back it up with people and resources. So the good, we're hands off on the game unless the dev needs help. Like I said, if you just want to disappear for a year and make your game and come back and deliver it, that's fine. That's how we operate. Usually, and actually most of the time, devs want feedback every week and they want a weekly call and so on and so forth. So we'll do that, but it's really up to you. We also don't force milestones onto you. So there's never an alpha deliverable that's tied to money or anything like that. We just work out a burn rate and how long we think the game will take. And I think that's really important because it allows you to create the game in the manner that you think makes sense. But we can also help significantly on the production side if you need that support. Counterculture, I guess we just try and do things differently. And it's crazy, but we try and treat people nicely first and foremost. And no catalog fillers. Like I get pitched so many games that don't require an investment from us. They've already had their dev funded. They just want a marketing partner. I could go pick up 30 of those today without any outlay and just, market them. But that's just filling your catalog with content. Like we really want to be 100% committed to every title that we work with. So these are some other publishers that operate in a somewhat similar manner to the sphere we do. These are from around the world. You've probably heard of most of them, and maybe there's a couple you haven't. But like it's gratifying that Raw Fury, after only 2 and a bit years, end up being compared to a lot of these other companies. And some of these do things differently than others. But when you're in the range of the type of indie games that we go after and the type of people we work with, it's generally this kind of crew. So I wanted to be open and share with you some other ideas if you were looking to publish your game. We're just one of a few. We like to think we're the best, but everyone's going to say the same. Okay, so pitching. I think I've only got 10 minutes left, so I'll try and speed up a little bit. This is about pitching your game. I think the important thing here is a pitch is not just asking for money. A pitch is if you're in the hall out there and someone says, "What are you working on?" Straight away you have to pitch. Even if it's like a 2 or 3 sentence thing to a friend of yours, you're still pitching because what you're trying to do is explain exactly what your game is and what it looks like, and that's an elevator pitch. But also, who are you pitching to? I want to do a talk one day where I give the audience 5 different pitches of the same game, but one of them it's to like a VC, one's to an investor, one's to the press. Like you have to think of how to describe your game in a way that's relevant for the people listening, and including like normal people, like your family. How do you explain to them what the game is, and are you able to do that? Always be ready to pitch your game. If you're sitting here now and you're working on a game and you can't do an elevator pitch and just stand up and tell someone what it is, spend a couple of hours just figuring out what that is and practice it. I'm going to move on. So thank you very much. I wanted to leave some time for questions if we have any. If we don't, that's also fine. this is my email address. If you want to pitch me a game or anything like that, you can just fire it over there. If you just want general advice, my general rule is if I can answer a question in less than 10 minutes, I'm happy to just give feedback or advice or anything. So always feel free to get in touch right here or on Twitter as well. Thank you very much for listening, everybody. I realized I talked really fast, so sorry if you didn't understand. Do we have any questions?
Yeah, hi.
Hi.
Can I have a couple of questions?
Well, let's see.
All right. So
I'm going to rate you on your first one.
The first one would be, can you tell what's the average time of the process, or what can be the...
From like first pitch to contract?
For all the blocks in total.
Sure. I am trying to sign a game. I sent a contract to a developer yesterday, and that email first came into me 2.5 weeks ago. So it can be really fast or it can take longer. It often depends on what the game is, what the circumstances are. But I would be very worried if we start working with a dev we want to and it's taking longer than 2 or 3 months. Obviously it takes time for these sorts of things, but someone told me that they'd been in due diligence with a publisher, an indie publisher, for 8 months, and it nearly killed them as a studio. So we try and avoid that whatsoever. So.
All right. The second I had was, you said the build can be early, and
yeah.
I just wanted to ask whether there are specific areas that you think that should be polished more than the others. So I'm talking graphics, gameplay, sound, animations. Anything is less or more relevant?
Sure. It actually doesn't matter. I think what we want to avoid, and what I certainly want to avoid from publishing anything, is something that is kind of okay on all of those things you just mentioned. If your game has a really specific and amazing aesthetic, so take The Last Night, which we're publishing, right? That like turns people's eyes towards it. Another example is Cuphead. Like, would Cuphead have been so successful if it just had normal art? Maybe not, right? It's a good hard platformer, but it gets people interested because they're doing something different. So it can have that and then kind of be backed up with discussion of gameplay, or it can look like shit and have the most amazing fun gameplay that it has in a 5-minute loop. And that could be, a couple of weeks of code gets you to that point. So for me, it's just if it has something in it that can give me a vision of what is going to be successful and popular about that game, and gives me a feeling of like excitement about any one of those parts. Like the sound design could be the most amazing thing and everything else kind of okay, but that's still exciting because there's some quality in there somewhere. So I don't really mind what it is. I can even get excited by games based on like a tagline, like this is X meets X or something. So, but there should always be that special something, which I think a lot lack and could do with working on that specifically.
Another quick one was, is it okay to include overhead budget?
The development budget, all we're looking for is contractors, freelancers, and salaries of the staff, plus 2 or 3 months after launch. And then the other part of money is everything else, services, spending, QA, marketing, that sort of stuff.
All right. Sorry.
I think there was another question back here. Yeah.
All right. So the last quickly.
No, I'm going to move you on. I'll be outside afterwards. You can come up and talk to me.
How important is experience of game developers for you? For example, if you take the situation where you receive a great build with a great gameplay, a great vision, great pitch, but an inexperienced dev and experienced at all, what are you?
So it's a good question. It's a great question. I don't care who's making the game until I get to maybe due diligence, right? And that's when you go, okay, if we're going to sign up with this developer and give them $200,000, like, have they shipped a game in the past? Do they know what they're doing? Or are they, in university right now? I don't think it matters that much. Like, I got asked this question last week. If our current game does badly, but our next game might do well, like, do publishers look at their past game? I don't think you should, right? I just came out of the world of VR for 4 years. And I think a good example there is Job Simulator. So if you've not heard of Job Simulator, it's very successful, very polished. The game they did before that wasn't very successful and wasn't very polished. So you could have looked at that and go, no, that's your type. I don't really care. If it was a very fresh team that had never shipped a game before and you're going for quite a large scope, I would suggest bringing on someone like a producer or someone to help. But again, that would happen in the due diligence phase. And once we're in that phase, we really want to work with that game. So we'll try and help that company get to that point. So that's us though, right? Many other publishers might be different, but I think anything you can do to just stand on your own feet with a game project is excellent. Like, I had a really good game pitched to me a few weeks ago, and I looked at the developer on Twitter, and on Twitter, her profile was like, game student at or something like that. And I was like, no, you're a game developer who's sent me a build of a game that's actually really fucking cool. Doesn't matter if you're a student or not, right? You're just a game developer. So hopefully that answers your question.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you.
don't like feel you have to always tell people you're a student things. I started at Oculus when I was a student, so it's fine. Anyone else? Hello.
Hi. So I think that maybe described earlier before I came, but I got a question that let's assume I am a sole developer. I got some great concept for a game, and I'm working on the placeholders, and I'm still the one guy that sent you a pitch and you liked it, and we are talking face to face. So what would you like to have better, the team I gathered and talked with? Yeah. Or some propositions of artists that I may know.
Yeah, it's a good question. What if it's a solo developer but it's going to need a team behind it? I'm in that situation right now. A solo developer sent us a build. I want to sign it. We're working with him where we suggest some contractors or freelancers on the audio side, and he's looking for people to work with. He also came armed with some ideas of who he'd like to work with in the company. I think what I'm interested in as a publisher is I don't really care if it's just you right now. I want to know who is going to make up that company that we're giving the funding to. And if they all happen to be freelancers, that's fine. Like, it doesn't really bother us. It's just good to have an idea. But also, that's what we're here for. We're here to help you find the right people. And if those are people we've worked with before, that's great. Something we do at Raw Fury is all the developers we work with are in a Slack channel together. So often they kind of share resources and people and feedback and builds. And I also tell those devs when I'm trying to sign a game, even before we've signed it. So there's often advice on like different people working on it and things like that. So I think for any publisher, including us, just have an idea of who might join the team. Anyone else? Hello?
So kind of a follow-up to the previous question. Let's say you get a game from a sole developer in Unity or, I don't know, RPG Maker, whatever. Yeah. And the guy tells you that he doesn't want to go into any kind of polished stage where he just wants to work on maybe not placeholders, but very generic art and everything. And the game is all about, for example, narrative. Would you even consider publishing something like that?
Is the question, would we consider publishing something that has a very strong narrative, but what we would consider bad art, and he doesn't want to replace
very generic, like, for pretty much what you get with the engine?
I don't know. That would be tough. Like, I think you have to have a balance in the game. I think it has very strong one thing and very weak something else. I would ask why they want to have generic art matched with fantastic writing rather than perhaps working with an artist to raise that.
Because producing art is a pain in the ass.
Right, but you can pay people that do art, right?
And then you will still have to, manage them and to get everything and
for sure, but it's
implement it into the game. So
no,
it's still a pain in the ass.
I think to answer your question, I would find that a little tough. I think even when you look at point and click adventures, right, they're all about the story and the narrative and the choices, but the ones that stand above still have beautiful art and things like that. I would not suggest going down that path. If that was me, I would just hire an artist, and if you need be, hire a producer. Like, that's what a publisher's for, is to pay for those people to help you get the game built to the quality it should be. I think if you're trying to cut corners on your own, you do whatever you want to do. I think the whole reason to get a publisher is to raise the potential of what the game can be above, with support and cash and people on that team. So that would be my argument, is like, I don't think you should do that anyway.
Yeah, of course. I'm in. Fair enough.
Yeah, okay. Anyone else? Nope. Okay. Oh, one more. Do we have one more? Sorry. Hello.
Hello. Is the $300,000 per 5 people reasonable money for you, in your opinion?
For how long?
Up to 3 years.
Yeah, like if you think of, it's all about burn rate, right? And it depends where they come from. You pay 5 people who live in LA for 3 years. That's going to be like $1.5 million, $2 million, something like that, right? You pay 5 people in Poznań, for example, maybe that's a lot cheaper. So I think, but also 3 years is a long time to make a game with a publisher. We tend to do things between 18 months, 2.5 years, maybe something like that. That seems fine without knowing who you are or what you're working on. You just work it out on burn rate. What's our salary going to be if you can live on $25,000 a year or $15,000 a year, whatever you need to survive? Add in the costs for art, any freelancers and contractors. It doesn't really matter what the amount is. It's all about is it worth paying that per month for how long the game is going to take. That's how we look at it because we do things monthly.
Okay, so $500,000 per for.
Are you negotiating up now?
Yeah, I'm just
you're going the wrong way.
What are the money the publishers are?
So what are the budgets of the different publishers? I can't tell you that. Like you have to. I know some of the publishers, but you just have to talk to individual publishers about that. If they're anything like us, we have a range that we tend to prefer to do things in. But again, the money is just the money. Like a publisher can always find more money or spend less money. It's about the fit and the relationship and the team. So that said, if someone came to me and said, "Hey, I need a couple $1 million for this game," I'd probably back out because we like to work with teams of between 1 and 5 on creative products that last 2 and a bit years. That usually ends up being around a certain amount of dollar spend.
Thank you.
Cool. Okay, I'm getting angry looks from everywhere. So thank you so much for listening to me. I will be around if you want to come and ask questions. Thank you.